What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another mailbag. Now, as I said in the last one, I'm doing these every other week just so things don't get too repetitive. I had 31 questions for today, so I'm going to paraphrase a lot of the questions, but they will be up on the screen for you to read for any context that I missed. I've been dropping daily videos, so definitely go check back and look at those, but instead in this intro, like I said in the previous mailbag, I'm going to look ahead at some of the content and update you guys on what the upcoming plans are over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow I plan on doing draft profiles, but I'm not entirely sure if I will be ready to upload them by tomorrow. I'm having Chris help me out with the graphics for those that I can put into the video. I don't know if he's going to be done by then, so if not, I will have some sort of filler video, maybe stream highlights or something tomorrow, but we'll be getting into the draft profiles. I'll have 5 before the lottery. Every other prospect I want to wait to see their measurements, but I'll have 5. I'm sure you guys can probably guess the 5 that I will have before the draft lottery. We'll also have a mock draft with trades coming up next Saturday. That should be fun. And then in about a week from now, I will start up Trade Talk Tuesdays as well, so hopefully you're looking forward to that. And then after that, we'll get into some draft combine content, some overrated prospects. I'll do a video on that, just dropped underrated prospects. And we'll have our draft lottery live stream, and we'll get into the mock off season, and we'll get into some other sort of stuff. But for the next couple of weeks, it'll be some draft profiles, a stream highlights video or 2, a mock draft, Trade Talk Tuesday, and another video that was actually recommended in one of the questions, so I'll bring it up then. Anyway, with all that being said, let's jump into your questions. The first question is from Near012, who is a channel member, very supportive channel contributor, so I appreciate you, Near012. I wanted to put your question first for that reason. He says, should Portland go after Zach LaVine and at the cost of sign and trading Ant? Assuming we get Grant, that would give Portland a lineup of Dame, LaVine, small forward, Grant, and Nurk. That on paper is a contending team. I would not go after Zach LaVine. I don't really understand the logic in going after Zach LaVine. You have Anfernee Simons, and Zach LaVine's better right now, but not so much better that I would sign and trade Ant for LaVine. And I don't think LaVine would want to come here, and it would probably take more than Ant. I just don't think that our priority should be at the guard position this year. I think we have our 3-guard rotation set, and it would suck to trade Ant for Zach LaVine, who's going to have surgery, knee surgery, this offseason. And then Ant truly does become a fringe superstar, maybe. That's probably his ceiling, but, you know, if Ant becomes an all-star and Zach LaVine keeps having injury issues, we could be looking back at that trade saying it was a huge mistake. So I would not go after Zach LaVine if I was Portland this offseason. The next question is from Caleb Pendergraph, asking if the Blazers should go after TJ Warren or if his injury history the last few years makes it too risky. And thank you, Caleb, for being a channel member. TJ Warren is a solid idea. He's not good defensively, so he needs to be more of a ancillary move, not like the move of the offseason or the second move of the offseason. He just needs to be a guy that you bring in as a role player. If you can sign him with a biannual exception, which is about $4 million, I would absolutely take it. If you're talking about giving him full mid-level exception money, I am very hesitant to do so. I think that might be a little bit too much. Aiden asks for the percentage chance out of 100 that we land Jeremy Grant this offseason. I would say 65-70%. Andrew Hartwell asks, when did the Mongols rule China? Blue Wolf asks, when I attended my first Blazer game, who is my all-time favorite Blazer player? I attended my first game when I was 3 or 4, and I was confused why we were there. I asked if my dad was playing down there, and that's why we were there watching a basketball game. I was really confused. The next Blazer game that I can remember attending, the Blazers lost to the Warriors like 86-83 or something along those lines. If somebody can find that box score, post it in the comment section below. All-time favorite Blazer player is Damian Lillard at this point. Braden asks who I think will make the biggest jump from this year to next year. I would have to go with Nasir Little for that one. Bryce Cook asks me for my favorite Trailblazer moment. His was Dame's buzzer beater against OKC. Mine is Dame's buzzer beater against Houston, because that was the first time as a Blazer fan that I saw Portland even win a series, and I was there, and for it to happen like that was absolutely phenomenal. It was fun. It was amazing. Cameron Weaver asks, if you had the power to change one thing about the Blazers right now, what would it be in terms of management, current roster, draft, etc.? I would probably go with a new GM at this point. I don't trust Joe Cronin, but, you know, if you could add Giannis to the roster, and if I had the power to do that, I'd obviously do that before anything. If we're talking draft-related, give me the #1 overall pick, and then maybe trade it down to 3 and 12 if OKC ends up at 3 or something like that. Shout out to my guy Crushables. Thank you for the shout out in your latest video, Crushables. I appreciated it, man. Thank you for asking a question as well. He asks, should we have any interest in a guy like John Collins if the Hawks were willing to trade him, which has always been rumored. Love what y'all guys do. I can't talk. Love y'all. What y'all got, I don't know. As far as John Collins goes, he doesn't really solve the Blazers' defensive issues, and if you're going to go out and get a guy like Jeremy Grant, which is the rumor right now, I wouldn't like a Jeremy Grant-John Collins pairing at the forward positions. I don't think you have an on-ball stopper at all with those two, so I would probably not be too interested in John Collins, especially given how much it would take to give up to get him. He's a nice idea, but he's a nice idea if you have like an OG and an OB. If you have a Jeremy Grant, it doesn't really make much sense, and I just think we're going to go the Jeremy Grant route. What's up, Derek? We got Derek Sprower with a question. If the Blazers end up with the 4th pick in the draft, should we trade down for OKC picks 12 and 30? 12 and 30 is not enough to get the 4th pick. If you could get a future pick and maybe another pick on top of that, I guess. But we'd definitely be making that trade to trade the 12th pick for Jeremy Grant. So 4 for Jeremy Grant and 30, and even if there's a future first in that, is just bad value, to be quite honest with you. When you're talking about at 4, you probably have a chance at a future star in Jaden Ivey, Shaedon Sharpe, if Banchero falls, because Ivey goes top 3, or maybe it's a Jabari Smith, maybe it's a Chet Holmgren. You can't give up on one of those guys and only get Jeremy Grant and then a 30th pick and then a future first. I would trade down. If OKC somehow fell to 6, I would trade down from 4 to 6 and 12, and then I would, you know, trade 12 for Jeremy Grant, I guess, since that's what the Blazers want to do. And then you're sitting there at 6 and you can still take a high caliber prospect, but something less than that is not enough value for the 4th overall pick. Shout out to Eli Hanna, who says they're going to be dealing the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas. I used to watch that on TV. That's pretty cool. Who is my dream Summer League lineup? It'd definitely be 1 or 2 draft picks. If we have a top 3 pick, that would be fun. If we get a top 3 pick, we could trade it down for 2 first-round picks and have 2 first-round rookies on that Summer League team. But then, yeah, like you state, Trendon Watford, Greg Brown, Keon Johnson, Brandon Williams, that is absolutely a fun Summer League team. I agree. I think we're going to have a really good Summer League team. So some combination of that would be a lot of fun. Shout out to Embarking Box. He asks, is there any realistic sign and trade targets that make any sense for us? Also, would you risk unprotecting the pick to Chicago this year if we could trade a couple future firsts for a borderline all-star player if that was on the table? I don't want to unprotect our pick this year. The borderline all-star player is most likely to be Jeremy Grant. I would not make our pick this year unprotected to trade a couple future firsts for Jeremy Grant. That could be an absolute disaster, and you're probably overpaying for Jeremy Grant anyway. As far as sign and trade targets, I mean, Miles Bridges makes the most sense, but I think Charlotte matches whatever on him. Same thing with DeAndre Ayton. Any other sign and trade targets don't really make sense or are not good enough to really try and pursue. Like Colin Sexton doesn't make sense for the Portland Trailblazers long term, so I don't really know of any others. If there's any I forgot, though, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Jonathan Yu asks, Jeremy Grant has been in the talks lately. What other players strike interest to you this offseason? And then lists a few names. Kyle Anderson would be okay, but I don't know. I've never really enjoyed watching his game. Montrezl Harrell off the bench could be solid. We do need a backup center. Same thing with Chris Boucher. TJ Warren, as I stated earlier, for the biannual exception would be interesting, but I'll have videos talking about free agents, so I kind of want to hold off on that sort of talk right now. Jonathan, you had another question. After making your underrated prospects video, would it be clear to note that if any of these players reached as far down as our first second round pick, you would heavily consider the Blazers drafting them? And I would absolutely consider drafting all the prospects in that video with our second round pick, except for maybe Vince Williams. I had Vince Williams as a mid-second round grade. Everybody else I had ranked higher on my big board, or currently have ranked higher on my big board right now than that Blazers second round pick. So if they fall, you have to consider them, but obviously things can change. My opinions on prospects could change. Who the Blazers like, who knows? If they make a trade, their team needs could change. So everything is fluid up until that point, but I wouldn't be upset with any of those guys except for maybe Vince Williams if we took them with our first second round pick. Vince Williams is a guy who is more of a guy to target with our second to last second round pick, or maybe trade that pick up with some cash to get him in the mid 40s, or he could potentially go undrafted and be a good undrafted rookie free agent. If you missed that video, definitely go watch it. JP asks, what's your favorite food? I don't know my favorite like dinner food, but in terms of dessert, if you've never tried peach crisp warmed up with some vanilla ice cream, I heavily recommend it. The basketball question was, do you think whoever wins the Celtics-Bucks series wins it all, assuming Middleton comes back, and if they get past Boston? Great content. Thank you, JP. I think that I wouldn't say the Celtics would win it all if they win that series. I think the Suns could definitely beat them, and I think even the Heat could beat them. But I have a feeling the Bucks are going to win another championship. They look really, really good right now, even without Chris Middleton. So right now, the Bucks would probably be my pick to win it all. Shout out to Justin Ty. Says, maybe not a mailbag, maybe it is, maybe it's its own video, but your ideal realistic off season. I have a video like that planned. I probably won't go to the lengths that you say to go to with having somebody check it and everything, but I do have a video like that planned in the next couple of weeks. It might be not completely realistic, but it's more so just pitching ideas out there in different routes and things like that, so stay tuned for that. Shout out to Caleb Floyd, who says, who are some backup centers who we could reasonably sign for next year? Eubanks, in my opinion, would be a good third center. Maybe if our pick falls, Cronin selects Duran. Thanks. It could be Koloko if he falls to 36. It could be a free agent. I don't really know yet. As far as free agent talk, I'm going to wait until around free agency. I should have prefaced this mailbag prompt with that. But Eubanks is a solid third center. I wouldn't want him as the backup. Who I'd want as a backup? There's probably 10 or 15 names you could find out there that would be okay as a backup center. Logo Crazy says, in a scenario where the Blazers end up with the 6th pick, what would you want to see them do with that pick? I'm not super thrilled with anybody there at 6 unless Shaedon Sharpe falls, but assuming Sharpe, Ivey, Banchero, Jabari, and Chet all go top 5, I would look at trading 6 down to maybe San Antonio at 9. They also have 20 and 25. I would look to trade down with OKC for 12, 30, and maybe a future first if possible. I would definitely look to trade down from the 6th spot. I'm not super thrilled with anybody that would be taken there. AJ Griffin, I've soured on a little bit. Keegan Murray, I've never been high on. So I think you could get a similar caliber prospect at 9 or 12 than you can get at 6. And you can get more assets to make the inevitable Jeremy Grant trade happen. Shout out to Muran, who says, if we use our TP on Grant, let's assume we give the Milwaukee first, a second, and Keon. What else and for who could we trade for? Can Bledsoe and 3 more second-round picks and or a 2029 first-round pick get us something? Probably not. The 2029 first-round pick is so far in the future that it'd be hard to make that work. And seconds aren't really going to get you anything valuable considering Bledsoe's making $19 million next year. And if Bledsoe's traded, he has to be guaranteed next year. So Bledsoe's contract, unless you attach noticeable value to it, is going to be really hard to move. I think he could be on the roster next year as a trade chip for around the deadline. Maybe at that point we know we're going to make the playoffs and can trade our future first and are willing to lightly protect our first that year because we know we're going to be in the playoffs, or in the worst case scenario, maybe we lose in the play-in and end up at 12, 13, or 14 or something like that. But Bledsoe's contract is definitely a tricky asset to move. Shout out to Pineapples, another channel member. Thank you, Pineapples. He says, Jordan Poole or Anfernee Simons? Overall fandom says Poole, Blazers say Simons. Can you do a simple analysis on who you think is better? I think Anfernee Simons is more of a point guard. I think Jordan Poole benefits from playing in Golden State's system, which I'm jealous of. I think they are particularly even. Poole's looked really good in the playoffs so far and kind of proven it on that stage where Simons hasn't. So for that reason, I probably have to go with Jordan Poole right now. But I think Anfernee Simons has a higher ceiling because he's a better athlete and has better ball skills. And if that can translate itself to the highest potential level, then I think Anfernee Simons has a higher ceiling. Piston Mike says, would the Blazers be willing to give up another young, high upside player besides Keon Johnson for the Jeremy Grant deal? I mean, I can't speak for the organization, but maybe they'd give up Greg Brown III as well. But you're not getting Nasir Little, or definitely not Anfernee Simons for Jeremy Grant. And if the Blazers did do that, I would have my biggest rant ever on stream. That would be disgusting. So maybe Greg Brown III, but the Blazers don't really have another Keon Johnson type of prospect. Either it would be too much to give up, or just a guy like a Greg Brown. Shout out to P-Town Maid, who says, what's an underrated free agent that the Blazers can sign? I'm going to wait for videos to answer that. Shout out to Smooth Moves, who says, would you rather have Banchero over Jabari if we had a top 2 pick? At this point, Jabari, but I don't really see why people are so in love with Jabari Smith. Right now, he seems like a high floor guy. He's just a guy who's going to be a 3-and-D. Phenomenal 3-point shooter that can play some perimeter defense, but he has a ways to go to be much more than that. He struggles handling the ball. He's not much of a rim protector. He's not much of a playmaker for others. He's going to struggle doing things off the dribble initially in the NBA, in my opinion. So I don't see why people are so in love with him. I could see the case for Banchero over Jabari, and I might have Banchero over Jabari by the time the draft rolls around. Shout out to Tilly, who says, if you were the GM, what do you think would be the biggest hurdle in getting the team to contention level in the shortest amount of time without blowing things up completely? The biggest hurdle would be our lack of assets, because other than a 2025 Milwaukee first, which probably doesn't have much value, and Keon Johnson, who might have value to some teams but not value to others, what else do we have to trade? Yeah, we could trade Nas, but we shouldn't have never been in a position to have to trade Nas in order to get value back in a trade. That's what sucks about this past trade deadline, where we barely got any assets back, is we don't really have the assets to pull off 2 moves or to really get to contention level, in my opinion. I'll wait and see, and it'll be fun to watch Cronin try and pull some strings and make things happen, but he's already hedging his bets, given the position that he's put himself in by saying we don't have to hit a home run in one offseason. So the biggest hurdle is definitely the lack of assets. Shout out to Thomas Saransky, who says, who's the worst free agent you'd be comfortable giving the full mid-level exception to? As I said, I'm going to wait for those videos. I should have put it in the mailbag prompt so you guys didn't waste a question asking me about free agent stuff that I want to wait to talk about for videos, but also it's like with all this draft stuff, and I'm paying a ton of attention to that, I don't have a great grasp of free agents yet, or how free agency should play out. And that obviously depends on a potential Jeremy Grant trade between now and then. So definitely going to hold off on really going into depth on that until late June. Shout out to Zach, another channel member, and a mod, of course. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate you and all your moderator work. And I appreciate your question. He says, if we got the 4th pick and we're not able to find a good trade and the power forwards all went top 3, would you be okay with taking Shaedon Sharpe at 4 for the Blazers, or would you just take Ivey anyways? I think you have to consider Sharpe. Apparently he has a 49-inch vertical. Don't know how much stock you should put in that. It was a private workout measurement, so I don't know if I trust it. But the dude definitely has a lot of potential on both sides of the floor as a shot creator. I mean, you definitely have to consider taking him 4th overall. I think this dude could end up being a superstar and potentially the best player from this draft. So definitely have to take a good hard look at him. I think he's going to work out well, and I think he has a chance of going top 4, even if it's not the Blazers at 4. I think there's going to be a team that falls in love with him, and maybe he shakes up the top of the draft like Scotty Barnes did last year going 4, which surprised everyone. And then shout out Zachary Brem, who asks, out of all the guys the Blazers acquired this year, either off trades or free agents, who do you think will realistically be on the roster next year and then get actual minutes? I think Joe Ingles could or will be on the roster next year and get actual minutes. Everybody else is kind of obvious, like Josh Hart, he's going to get minutes. I think Justice Winslow could see some spot minutes. It seems like the Blazers are really high on him. Other than that, none of these guys really seem a shoo-in to get minutes at all. So we'll have to wait and see on how the roster plays itself out. If we make a consolidation trade at some point or in the offseason and consolidate assets for somebody good, obviously it opens up more rotation spots on the back end of the rotation. So we just have to see how this plays out. Anyway, that wraps up your questions. Thank you for asking them. I will catch you in tomorrow's video, which should be a draft profile, but if not, should be some stream highlights. So hopefully you enjoy that. Definitely check out the Draft Sleepers video that I dropped yesterday. And with that, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.